Although Kerwin Springer describes himself simply as the math teacher from YouTube, I believe that this is his humility shining through. For with a massively successful Discord channel, 100,000 followers on YouTube, and a popular student hub where students can find tuition and free resources for almost any CSEC, CAPE, and even SAT subjects, Kerwin is one of the most dedicated teachers I know. But who is Kerwin Springer really? What motivates him, inspires him, and what has been his greatest challenge to date? Let's jump right into my conversation with Kerwin. Welcome to Season 3 of Conversations with Kathy, the podcast for anyone who's looking for a place filled with honest conversations, tangible takeaways, and new perspectives on life, love, and everything in between. And I'm your host, Kathy Ann Roach. Let's jump right in. So, Kerwin, I want to thank you very much for saying yes. First, I didn't know if it was the excitement of CXC that you were just saying yes to everything. You know, you're celebrating with your students. And I said, it would be great to be able to interview you. And then the yes came back immediately.
So it was strategic. You just knew I would say yes.
No, I actually didn't. But after I thought about it, I said, is it that he was just in such a good mood that he was just like, yes? Because
No. I was saying, people just call me the yes man. So I would say yes to any opportunity I grab at.
Well, I am very happy to have this discussion with you because, like I mentioned to you, I've been following you for a while. So for the people who don't know who I'm talking to, for the people who don't know who Kerwin Springer is, how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So people primarily know me as the maths teacher from YouTube. I would describe myself as a teacher. And I just love the idea of combining all the different talents that I have into giving value in the form of teaching, and even beyond the scope of maths, physics, chemistry, biology, into just life and how I experience life.
When I started following you, my son was actually doing his CSEC exams. And I looked at your style in terms of really down to earth. I saw the children on the channel really engaging with you on their level, because I remember when you got your haircut messed up and they made some good fun of you. Right? And you were open to that. But behind the teacher, because I want to get into the stuff that you do on YouTube, and I think the impact that you're having on our students locally and in other countries across the Caribbean. But I want to know who is the person behind the channel. Who is Kerwin? What is it that motivates you? What was your background like growing up that you have a passion for what you do right now?
All right. So you want deep things. You want the
deep.
You want
deep one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up on what can be described kind of like a farm estate in Arena, Sunrise, with like the full ones. There was a horse, cow, goat, sheep, that kind of thing. So, although I would say very humble beginnings, one of the things that was a theme in my young life was like really good parenting from my parents. My dad was actually a pastor for a lot of my life.
Right.
And my mom, she also had a key input. I also was the kid who was always with a book.
Right.
Like I just used to eat, play, read, sleep. As I just read constantly. So I always say I've never really seen someone maybe even age 15 who has read more than I've read.
Yeah.
By the time I was like age 7, like I was just always reading. People don't understand. Like I was just always with a book. So
yeah.
Things that I wasn't even supposed to be reading, I was reading. So
right.
Now I wish I could be reading as much as reading that. So that was me. And because of that, primary school felt like deja vu for me. It was a breeze. It was like 98%, 100% right through.
Right.
SEA was not SEA, it was common entrance. And that as well felt like a breeze, like just shade up some things, you write a super essay, you finish and you're back. Secondary school is where I began to feel some challenge in terms of education-wise. But I was always exposed to a wide range of different things. Although I would say I would probably describe my background as a little more conservative. I was exposed to like music, art, sports, as well as education, as well as negative things like individual that I posted recently got shots and that kind of thing.
Right.
I am really happy that I had a nice, well-rounded experience as a child. And it kind of influenced how I engaged the culture and how I felt culture. And I just, part of the theme that comes up in my teaching is that. And I think that's like one of the key elements that unlocks a really powerful advantage in online teaching, when you can engage students with culture, with how they experience life in 2021 and 2020.
Yeah.
So I use that to my advantage, coupled with music, coupled with art, coupled with anything that I can throw at it from my childhood. I went on to study mechanical engineering, and I was pretty good at physics. Some of the maths in mechanical engineering, I was like, there's too much maths, even for a maths teacher. Even for a maths teacher.
Right.
Yes, so I went into mechanical engineering slight for a little bit, like for summer internship, and then I was like, the opportunity arose to do teaching, which I was already doing privately from like since I was in Form 5. I was writing the CSEC maths exam,
right,
and teaching. CSEC maths.
Okay.
It was like around then I started teaching CSEC maths back in 2005,
right,
and I began doing it out of necessity when I was in UV renting and living on a $100 budget for the week from my parents. And I was like, I have to choose between what I'm going to eat or travel home. And that's when I began charging for my teaching and everything. Really? But I always try to keep the aspect of just teaching, for free, just fun of it. And that kind of was one of the reasons that started the YouTube channel back in 2018.
You said you had a little bit of a Christian background, but you were also exposed to all of these other things, and then going out to university on your own way and not so sheltered anymore. What kept you focused? Because sometimes I hear you talking to the young people and saying, keep your head on and wait, don't rush the girlfriend and all these sorts of things. What was it, your parental influence that kept you, quote unquote, grounded?
So you said two things there that was too correct, although I could pretend that they were correct. You said one was that I had a little Christian background. I had a heavy Christian background. I could count on one hand how many times I missed church for my entire life. Right. And some weeks I was in church like 3 days a week, 4 days, that kind of thing. So I was inside 100%. I still am, still have heavily involved, but a lot of it is education now. And the next thing was that
you stayed on the path.
That's right. And I stayed focused. That's an assumption there. That's a strong assumption. But I think I didn't go off on the deep end. I was always heavily motivated by curiosity and the adventure of what if I know I could create this thing, I could do this thing. And the books now, the fantasy of actually making this into reality was what, I may have not been the most focused person in year 2 university. Just actually not going any classes and just lying and enjoying life in that way. But at some point in time, I decided, I never went off into any strong addictions, because the kind of person I'm actually kind of afraid of certain things like drugs and womanizing and that kind of thing, because I know I'm a kind of compulsive person. So I might be the person that will sell everything in my house.
Yes. If I become a drug addict. You have to know yourself. Yeah. And I give you the benefits of the doubt, but I admire what you've done and the things that you continue to do, a person at your age, and the commitment that you've shown to the things that you've done. So I'm walking through the life of Kerwin Springer because I want people to get an idea, because I know those students, they know some of your stories, but I want them to get to see a side of you, or maybe hear a little bit about you, things that they didn't know. So you moved from university, and I know I don't know when the family got started. So you want to tell me a little bit about that?
All right. So I had this, and it was a pretty popular Christian band, and it's still in existence in some way, the Firm Foundation family. So I was never in my life a stranger to the spotlight because I was a musician in church. I was playing the keyboard from like 5. I played in front of large audiences, talk in front of large audiences, like thousands. So the internet was just like a follow through.
Yes.
And somewhere along that time, this girl began running me down. And when she see this podcast, she'll be like, wow. Wow.
Yeah. It's
okay. Yeah, this is not the full story.
Yeah.
But anyhow, yes, somewhere around that time, I met Lubia. That's my wife.
Yeah.
And she's also a member. She's also a super singer and a member of the band. And there's a lot more into that story. I don't know how much of that is interesting.
I love love stories. So give me a little bit of the love story.
A little bit of the love story. Well, she actually had a green card to the United States.
Right.
So she was there for some time. And that was some long distance situation there, right around after I left university. She left university. And like and subscribe was just too strong for Kerwin Springer. So she was back in Trinidad.
Right.
I think we got married in 2014, 2015.
Right.
And we have 2 children. 2 brilliant. Well, Javi's extremely brilliant. He's like a phenom. Yeah. Zion is a tornado. So, and we have a family.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of interesting to balance is, I'm sure for her, is the amount of time that I spend in my pursuit.
I know you spoke about your kids, and I did notice that you had a health challenge with one of your children. How have you coped with that? Is it, first of all, is the baby, I don't know, I don't think he's a baby anymore.
He's 5.
Yeah. So how is he doing?
Yeah, so I am definitely in the future going to just maybe write a book or something on that, because some torturous experiences that I feel like I could help people on. It's a very common thing, sickle cell anemia.
Yeah.
So it was probably one of the hardest experiences of my life, learning how to manage that. As a mathematical person, you're very logical. 1 + 1 is 2. I'm a very logical person.
Yeah.
So you want to put certain actions and expect certain results, and that disease is not necessarily 1 + 1 = 2. So there's always some new thing that you have to keep looking out for. There's always some medication, some this, some that, or the other. He's such brilliant, nice, well-behaved gem. As a parent, to see your child going through certain pain crisis, and it's really tough. It was probably maybe it's the hardest experience of my life, having to deal through that and manage through that. But I think it has helped me to become a very compassionate person and have an eye out, because I remember when I was around 18, between like young adult 18 to 25, certain things just didn't used to affect me. Like you hear certain things on the news. Or this person is with this person has this person house being down, this person child. It didn't used to affect me, but when you become a parent and you actually experienced it, you could actually empathize more. You could empathize more as a teacher when you realize that this person just had a really bad environment and they had no hope of passing mathematics. So it really helped me to have a solid view of the world, I would say. In terms of that, looking on the good side of it. In everything I do, I try to be very to causes like that. So the student will always keep investing in children like that.
You mentioned about having to deal with this. And like I said to you at the start, before we started recording, I said, one of the things that I wanted to get into is how men deal with certain types of issues. And as a man, do you think you were prepared at all to deal with your son's issue? That you had resources, or that you had access to right support as a father having to deal with this with your son?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Like in terms of like government or general community, social framework, not really. But in terms of like, yes, my lifestyle, my faith, my father, I had things to emulate that was solid.
Yeah.
And it really helped. So because I would be the more, I would say, stronger person in terms of emotional stability and logical decisions when everything going haywire between me and my wife. So that helped to keep everything. You know, sometimes you feel like you're losing your sanity. I low on sleep. I'm running myself thin with lessons.
Yeah.
And then some of the videos that I did on YouTube editing, a lot of them, I am in the hospital editing those videos.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm in the hospital doing those videos. And people didn't even know. People
Yeah.
didn't even know. So it helped me to, not to lose my senses during
Yeah.
that
So
time.
it gave you a little space, a little escape, a little space to stay sane.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump into the other thing that I admire about you is the fight in quotes, or the stance. I prefer to say the stance you took last year with CXC. I
Right.
mean, that issue really exploded in terms of what people felt the children had to go through in the middle of a pandemic, looking at what other countries had done, because I was actually looking at what they had done in the UK to account after all of the noise. And CXC just seemed to like put up brick walls against everybody. But you kept pounding and you continued to speak and advocate for the children. What are your thoughts on what happened, and what are your thoughts on what parents can do going forward?
All right. Well, the place we are in the Caribbean is that CXC basically has a stronghold and monopoly on education. They are the gateways. They are the pump. They are what everybody is, whether we like it or not, they are ingrained in the Caribbean culture.
Yeah.
For example, any country that is under CXC. And because of that, it's almost like they have powers like of FIFA over football, where whatever they say go, and CXC has become larger than life, larger than itself. If you really study it, we never really stopped to really speculate behind the words, the three letters.
Yeah.
What is going on? It's that something happened bad, we can just blame CXC, but no one really is accountable. Anything is just CXC, or CXC, and it's just something that we do. But I use my position, my popularity, my online presence to kind of like point out why it is that we have to be going through these inconveniences, this shabby service that CXC is doing as an educational body. And I think some of the things that I've done indirectly helped at least making them put on a show that they are giving, that they are giving better service.
Yeah.
So at the very least, it makes students aware. Because what happens, if I may say, is that parents like yourself, when CXC happens, then you realize, wow, this was horrible. This was a horrible experience, and it didn't need to be so. And then afterwards, it kind of feeds into your memory. So it's not all of the population experience. It's not like everybody in the population driving down and seeing a big hole in the road. It's a select few. So my job is just to keep it in the air and hoping for change and be an agent of change. So I always advise like some of the things that CXC should be doing. We should be adopting a more clear and I would use the word honest examining process where we could see what is going on behind. See what mark the student is getting, see how the marks are arranged. And the student and the teacher could have more leverage than over the exam.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things that you have also started to tout is something I said when my son was even doing SEA, was that parents need to know that they have more control over their children's education than they think they do, meaning that you do not have to put your child through this pipeline, this predetermined pipeline of you must go to this primary school, you must do SEA, then you must do CSEC, and then you must do... There are other options, there are homeschooling options, there are other exams that children can take. And I think that you have started to talk to parents about, you have options. You can do SAT, you can do different things, you can skip the A's and do... So I think you have started as seeing you having these conversations. What has the response to that been like for parents who say, you know what, I'm skipping this and I'm sending my child straight to do SATs? Because I think that kind of lived in a particular category or quote unquote class of people who that was a natural thing for them because their children were going to go abroad and whatever. And for most of us, we just like, okay, but we had to go see second. We never even thought about that. But I think it's becoming more and more of a thing, and you're talking about it too. So what's your response been like?
I think the same thing that happened when Digicel came to Trinidad and TSTT made B Mobile, and then there was this price war and everything and it only helped the customer in the end.
Yeah.
So by popularizing other modes. And to me, is the key is happiness and leading a purposeful life and that kind of thing. So as parents, you would be looking for that in your child. And if you feel like CX is the only route, the only ladder in education, well, you're forced to use that. But if you see another thing that can work and it makes perfect sense and it's better, then the competing of ideas, competing of exams, the competing of the pumps, different things that can be used in climbing the ladder of education. It's just better for the student. It's just better for the. So that's part of my rationale in how I approach and talk on these things.
Right.
So I spent some time in the trenches just making sure I got all the information on SATs and had the full grip of the syllabus and everything before I began teaching it widely. And parents, the response has been really good. I have students who have England, US, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly a week ago, we had this student up live and we were talking to a student who left a really good school, what they call a prestige school. In Form 4, and she just did lessons with the student up alone. And her rationale was all this class whole day. And I could just do lessons. I just work with myself, and you are a pretty determined person. And she got all ones.
And that's the hard decision for parents to make because we are so, like I said, it's so ingrained that you have to go through the system. Yes. So for me to pull my child out and say, go and do it as a private student or go do lessons and don't go to school, that is like unheard of. That
it's scary. But that's my reason for like put it on YouTube. Another person would see that and realize I'm thinking about doing this and it can be done. It can be done.
As we close off, what would you say to two questions? What would you say, one, to the parent of a child who is struggling? How would you encourage them to keep believing that their child is able to succeed? And two, what would you say to the child who's struggling and feels like, see this academic thing, I can't do it. I'm not like Kerwin. I was reading at 7. I could read at 15. So I have no chance. How would you encourage these two sets of people?
Right. To the parent, I would say there's an element of ownership and responsibility. Because like every day I deal with parents, like maybe 5-10 phone calls on average daily. Sometimes it's more. One of the common themes I could see sometimes is that parents kind of shirk their responsibility a bit. And they are concerned. They are doing the best in terms of their own, what they have been exposed to and trained from small. But I think they can adopt some more responsibility and be more aggressive, not towards the child, but towards their influence and the impact that they can have on the child's education. I sincerely believe that there is a huge correlation. And when I left university, I did a lot of private tutoring. I used to keep on a book, a little notes of top 10 things I noticed in the top 10 students, all the students who got scholarships, I write that. One of the things that was just there inevitably was a solid parenting background or push. So there's a strong correlation with that. So there may have been the chance that you may have to look yourself in the mirror and realize that maybe some things wasn't up to mark in the family. Maybe family was going through something and their education wasn't sharp. It was neglected. So there is some of that soul searching for the parent. And then there's the redemption where you could always work with what you have and get better. You fail maths 5 times, you can always repeat and get better. Maths is not, and this is to the student as well, it's not an endless, impossible hill. You can just keep getting better. And once you are improving, you are winning. So I believe that principle in mathematics can be adapted in some way to life as well. So the student who feel they are learning at a slow pace, they need to get something that they can feel motivated about, whether it's a career, a dream, a drive that they have. And it begins with reading. I'm a firm believer in reading because to me, reading opened up my mind to education. So even anytime I advise for somebody to read and I give them books to read, I just see something magical happens. I can't even explain it with reading. It's a very cliche thing that English teachers say, I think, that you need to read. but it's like exercise for the mind, and they reading good quality books, not Facebook, not Instagram, not tweets, them kind of thing. But reading books is like actual exercise, and it opens up your mind better. So there's a video that I did for somebody who is listening this, and they maybe want to hear some more on how to like pass maths. I'm struggling with maths. I failed maths 4 times. One of the things I became known for even before YouTube was helping students who struggle to pass. In fact, I was hired first in the government as a remedial teacher. That's helping students who are really bad in maths to get good in maths. And some of the things I picked up in that, I have it in the video. Help me pass maths, and you can watch that. You can watch that, then watch the comments, where you can see people who watched the video a year before have a success story. The next thing I would say before closing, Katian, is that we need to have a good environment. As a student, you need to try and uproot, even if I am your friend, I am your YouTube friend. And some people like literally say that in the comments as well. Well, you are my good environment. So I watch you every day, and that is my good environment. Because everybody in my family is eating like, I hate maths. I would never be good in maths. I could never pass maths. I could never do this. I could never do that. So yeah, you need to change the environment and what is being said around you and what you are saying to yourself.
Yes, I agree, because math can sometimes have a kind of psychological, because it's not easy. And then sometimes some of your worst teachers would have been your math teacher.
Right.
Right.
Fair. I'll take this.
But Kerwin, you are not one of those. And while my dog is now barking and interrupting our session, I would just like to thank you so very much, because I know that the work that you do, I want to tell you to keep it up. I think that you know how many people you have helped and how many children's lives you have changed. So I just want to thank you so much for all of the work that you do, and thank you for saying yes to having this conversation.
Thank you for having me here as well. And anytime you want to talk about anything, just feel free to call.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Conversations with Kathy. If you'd like to know more about me or how I help women who've been through a difficult relationship or breakup to gain clarity, learn to trust themselves, and to improve their overall outlook on life, then visit my website at www.katianroach.com. I'd love to connect with you.